This essay is an in-depth piece on the current systemic issues within America. It is a reflection on why dreaming of any kind of violent revolution is foolish and useless within the context of making the world a better place. If you or anyone you know is contemplating any kind of political violence, seek help within your community. These are trying, scary times. Many of us are at risk, but we have an obligation to not lose ourselves, our morals, or the hope for a better world in the face of such evils. This essay is not going to sugarcoat, soften, or cater to any belief system. Listen at your own discretion. Why won't someone just do it? Has become a vague statement with serious connotations in the last year. In some circles, it is a joke. In other circles, it is a serious question regarding the current social and political sphere. You may have asked yourself at some point, why won't someone just do it? I have an answer to this question. Get fucking real. Fascism rises when the moral compass of society fails and the common people begin taking easy answers to hard questions. Why won't someone just do it is another easy answer to an impossible question, and there's historical basis for this. In 1918, the Spanish flu epidemic was in full swing. This part of history is not often focused on or cared for, but it was important foreshadowing for the next pandemic. See, in 1918, scientists weren't stupid. They understood enough about the transmission of diseases to know that people gathering in one spot was an issue, that spittle was an issue. It was a hard question they were faced with, and the answer the health services of the world came to was hard. They ordered masks to be worn. They ordered social places to limit themselves or close. They ordered social distancing. The authorities decided they were not going to just let people die. Yet, the people lost it. They revolted. They protested. They kicked and screamed for the right to die of a novel strain of flu. When the common masses were given this same hard question, they chose an easy answer: to not do any of that, to ignore what the doctors told them. This was, in my opinion, a factor in things to come. The decision to order people to social distance was built off the care for citizens and their well-being. Sure, most people would be fine, but the disabled, the disparaged, and the poor were at an elevated risk. These calls helped society at large, provided that everyone followed. When the common people chose to ignore them, they were choosing themselves over society at large, but especially the disabled, the disparaged, and the poor. It undeniably tilted the moral compass of every society it affected, and in the West, it especially did so in a bad way. In the 1920s, business was booming until it wasn't. The major economies of the world had artificially financed World War I, and a system of debt for profit was beginning to be established and leveraged in many places across the world, but especially the Weimar Republic. That bubble was destined to pop, and when it did, it brought everything down with it. Paired with an all-around lackluster response by some key players, and the economy collapsed. When the world was asked a harder question, in the system that we built, where you must buy the privilege to live a life, what happens when you can no longer afford to buy it? The seeds planted by the forgotten pandemic of 1918 sprouted, and many societies as a whole chose an easy answer. Blame someone else. Tariff people. Let the government reach for absolute power. In the 1930s, fascism rose globally. I mention all of this for an important reason. It is happening again. The cycle has begun anew. Society ignored the well-being of the many. The governments of the world, especially in the West, artificially funded a comeback from COVID. The economies of the world exist on a system of debt for profit. The same mistake of 1930 will not be repeated. The banks won't collapse in a way that you were told about. But the same thing is happening. The erosion of the very ability for the average person to exist is extraordinarily prominent in everyday life. We will be asked the same question of the 1930s. How do we live in a system that demands money when there is no more money left? This question is being answered slowly and in a horrifying manner, the same way it was answered in the 1930s. The problem within American politics is indicative of a problem within larger American society. In so many facets and manners that no number of bullets or dead bodies will ever fix it. Fascism is not a body. It cannot be killed. It is a demon. It must be exorcised. We cannot shun it into the darkness, for there it thrives. We must bring all aspects of it to light. We must face it. We must make it so that the people are strong enough to answer hard questions with moral integrity, a spine, a backbone, however you want to say it. There is no easy answer to the dilemma before us. In American politics especially, there's an issue on both sides. Obviously, one side has Nazis in what may be the most sickening development of the 21st century. The other side has a bunch of losers. The American far left might be one of the most politically ineffective ideologies ever. There are several factors to this, so I'm going to just list them out. 1. America is a deeply religious country, especially in its culture. The Puritan culture that the founders of this nation brought with them has influenced modern culture regarding work. It has normalized hyper-individualism and, as a result, furthered the system of capital working to crush anyone who isn't a billionaire. Puritan sex culture has stigmatized the existence of anything sexual and even some things that aren't. This has created a culture of fear regarding intimacy and artificially labeled many things through history that were normal as strange. Lastly, it's a culture of punishment and guilt, and that makes it self-perpetuating. Almost all Americans are trained from a young age to ostracize anyone who doesn't have the same values that they have and shame them. And though American people's values may change, this fundamental belief of shaming people who think differently doesn't. 2. Due to the fearfulness of wrongdoing established by Puritan culture, the American far left is more afraid of doing something bad than doing nothing. The American left is constantly purity testing each other. It does not let figureheads exist without mentioning some prior wrongdoing and destroying them. They refuse to let themselves lead or be led, instead caught in infinite hypotheticals and arguing over more and more niche topics as the real world passes them by. 3. The American left is removed from reality. It does not exist in a real place. It is almost exclusively online and perpetrated by those on the internet. The Nazis and Republicans exist in places people can go, have people that can be talked to, and messaging that is delivered to people constantly. The socialist or the communist do not exist in a place you can go to. When they do exist in the real world, it is often people from those internet circles populating it. These people rarely know how to meaningfully interact with anyone who disagrees with them, and can barely interact with people who do agree with them without devolving into arguing as mentioned by point 2. The left relies on the intelligence of the common person to eventually find them. Unlike the right, who is constantly recruiting and trying to justify their existence, the left believes themselves to be the truly superior ideology, and as a result makes no attempt to draw people to their banners. Instead, they stay small and arrogant, believing that any smart person will find them, and anyone who doesn't is just a fool. Though this may be, in essence, partially true, this means the left's numbers are far smaller than they actually could be. Due to this culture of perceived intelligence, though, the left makes no attempt to simplify their message. In truth, left-leaning politics are always coming from a place of compassion. We find ourselves so lost in the literature of our ideology that we make no attempts to spread our ideology. A businessman doesn't make sales by reading an economy textbook, yet the communist tries to make more communists by reading Marx. The literature of the belief is not something accessible to everyone. By trying to gatekeep the movement to those who can understand it and only them, the left is not making itself smarter. It is proving that it lacks the sincerity and understanding of its own belief system, so much so that it would rather stay weak than make change by simplifying the message and spreading it. We are arguing that people deserve to not starve to death. Why do we need to use words from the 19th century? Because of these flaws, the American left is not a strong or effective belief. Despite appealing to basic human decency, the left fails to gain meaningful allies. It faces a war on two fronts, from the establishment who doesn't want to see it rise, and itself who can't let it spread. As material and mental conditions for the average person worsen, the left must evolve into a palatable belief system. Fascism is unfortunately proven to be palatable by the weak and the scared. If the left cannot provide a comparable set of answers built on decency and compassion to the easy answers built on anger and hatred, the left will not be a worthy adversary, and fascism will rise in full once more. This is the problem with why won't someone just do it, coming from the lens of leftist revolution. However, not every leftist is revolutionary, and not every revolutionary is leftist. Matter of fact, most political violence in this country is perpetrated by the far right in acts against their own enemies in their own system. Leftists infight with call-out posts and Twitter cancellations. The alt-right infights with bullets. Say someone on the center of the political spectrum were to revolt, or even someone center-right of the political spectrum. Say once again the bringer of progress is not the book-wise Marxist, but the person with the nerve to actually do something. What then? The issues within America are self-perpetrating and have been for most of the nation's recorded history. America is fundamentally a country built on consolidation of power by the elite. What separates us from the aristocracy of old is that any person is free to gamble within the system and potentially consolidate power of their own. This is the dream America is irrevocably built on, that you are free to have a complete decision over your own fate. While the American does decide their fate, the system built around that is designed to break you and make you accept something you might not like. For example, few jobs are glamorized by American culture to Americans. These jobs are jobs that allow those who have them to consolidate more power, jobs that make you well-known and wealthy. In more tame ways, it is the idea of the doctor who makes $500,000 a year, operating within the system. In its extremes, it is the cop who enforces the system, or maybe the actor who provides you a distraction from it. If you are wealthy enough in America, or popular enough, the system and the people within it will treat you like a god. Every young American dreams of these jobs in their youth because they are taught to buy into celebrity culture and perpetrate it. American law frequently makes exceptions based on someone's perceived ability to consolidate power. A rich criminal is not treated the same as a poor criminal, a cop not the same as a nurse, a white person not the same as the black. But all of these people, in some shape or another, contribute to the culture that allows this. The people in charge of this system have a vested interest in keeping this system in place. Those who run it point blame anywhere else. Those who distract you from it directly aid the system using the most powerful co-opting of art and culture and spare time the world has ever seen. Those who operate within the system and subsist by it refuse to risk their own well-being. Lastly, those who enforce the system monopolize violence to beat down anyone who does not conform to the system. Activists are wrongly imprisoned, threatened, or killed. Words and thoughts used by the activists are deliberately misconstrued and heavily propagandized. Those too poor resource or intelligence-wise to resist then try to conform to the system, working dead-end jobs, living in a cycle of debt, and they are the fortunate ones. Those who lack the resources to even try to conform are forced to turn to crime. The majority of people too poor to try to conform will be killed by the state or imprisoned by the state, living as slaves. The state does not always kill with guns. It uses homelessness, starvation, and perpetration of cultural violence to kill as well. This is all to say there are three classes of systemic enforcers within America and three classes of systemic survivors. The enforcers are the elite who run the show. The entertainer, the people who intentionally or not intentionally provide you just enough distraction to not do anything about it. And the well-off, who are doing just fine enough that they won't ever do anything. The survivors of this system being the activists who resist the system, dislike it, the pretenders who try to be the well-off, and the victims-to-be. When the middle class existed within America, most Americans had the chance to be members of the well-off. As capitalism progresses and more capital is taken from the people and more power is consolidated into the hands of the elite, the well-off middle class dies. The middle class was key in selling the American dream of choosing your own destiny, because in the 70s or the 80s, the majority of this nation could afford to half-ass their lives and wind up well off. Now that it is dying, Americans are aware that the system needs to change, but they cannot conceptualize any other system than this. As a result, the average American dreams of returning to the same system we live in, just before the coronavirus pandemic heightened and inflamed the issues and the ultimate end location of the system. Fascism is one of the darkest and more common places for capitalism to lead, and without close and strict monitoring, those who attain large amounts of money will try to shift governments towards fascism so they can take more money. It starts with corporate donations. It ends with billionaires getting a government job without due process, votes, or any kind of oversight. I mention all of this to say that the center of American politics, who find some of the system disagreeable, do not see enough of an issue to change the system at its foundation, and the right-leaning side of this country has a Nazi problem. They would not start a revolution in hypothetical or reality. Their action is limited almost exclusively to violence towards their chosen enemies. With the American left incapable of amassing enough power to revolt, to change the country at its foundation, the center lacking the desire to do so, and the right passively allowing the destruction of this nation, there is no hope for revolution to save us. I've been involved in politics since I was a kid. As a young man, I was advocating for the arts and school funding at my state's capital. In my adulthood, it is in the local activist scenes, feeding the homeless, volunteering at shelters, and standing in picket lines. In my time, I have learned that the average American dreams of revolution, of some violent unbecoming of all that once was, so that they can build their vague notions of something new. It is not going to come. There will be no war, no guerrilla fighters, no changing of the flags, not for a very long time. Yet so many Americans sit idly by, waiting for the day that the big movement is announced on TikTok or Instagram. The leftist speaks of the workers finally standing up, knowing the words of their idol who is long dead. The centrist dreams of Obama. They truly believe some bright-eyed candidate will completely undo all of the wrongdoing this country has done. Neither of them do anything to further these causes, and as a result, they're not going to happen. Far more importantly, we are not ready for revolution. Say today that the regime in office fell, and someone else was put in. Unless we change everything that allowed fascism to rise, it will return. This issue is deeper than political. It is within the moral fabric of our society itself. The average person in America, afraid of being weird, too ignorant to learn about any other person's experience, and barely conscious enough to recognize their own life, will always bring forth fascism. The schoolyard bully who became a cop will always bring forth fascism. The repressed gay man who becomes a homophobe will always bring forth fascism. The white woman who just doesn't talk to anyone who isn't white will always bring forth fascism. Someone who would rather let people starve than pay even the smallest tax or, God forbid, divert some of our exorbitant military budget will always bring forth fascism. The person who would rather argue with someone instead of doing something will always bring forth fascism. Every single person who would ignore every single harbinger of fascism, crying about normalcy and decorum and history all along the way, will bring forth fascism. Fascism is in the very fabric of society, and no amount of violence will ever change that. It is a demon that possesses the common folk, and it must be exorcised. The revolution is not coming. No one else is going to save you from this, not as we all are. Violence at this time, and for a long time into this country's future, is going to be for violence's sake itself. No words on bullets or tweets that get you fired can possibly change that. Violence itself can only be the tool of the revolutionary when the thought and conscience of all who oppose the system they live under can confidently conclude that there was no other way to solve the problem. Knowing this, treat any calls to political violence like the words of a drunk man who has never been in a fight. Anyone who has ever been in any serious fight or trained to fight will tell you that violence is always the last resort option, and the same is true politically. Not only are the American populace ineffective and incapable of revolution, those among us who do call to violence do not understand the full weight or consequence of that which I dream of. Assassination, overthrowing, and fires in the streets are the dreams of the deluded who use politics as a vessel for anger rather than a tool for change. All human life, for better or for worse, is precious. The Nazis have tried to teach us before that some lives cost less than others, and if any revolutionary adopts that ideal, they invariably and inevitably become the Nazis they once fought. A life is not to be taken unless there is no other choice, and resisting the onslaught of this nation's decline can be done in so many more ways than guns. Once, a long time ago, I may have told you what it is I am. When I was learning about America, I proudly would have called myself a Democrat, then a socialist, then a communist, depending on what age you caught me, and I used to argue with anyone who had a different word than me. because I was 15 and stupid. And unfortunately, a lot of people stay stupid. They argue with people who have different words than them, like Dr. Seuss and the Sneeds. They bicker for no real cause. As I grew into an adult, I saw futility in the American system. It is purpose-built to be that way. So I backed off. The American system is designed to do that, to be so ugly that anyone who can't completely turn off their conscience is unable to bear looking at the machine for long. If it makes any smart people so disgusted that they cannot bear it, only idiots will engage, and idiots are easily managed. They argue over words, after all, and then everyone who knows about the system is left just feeling terrible. The simple fact is, most people, even the most annoying and unbearable, generally do not bear anyone ill will. Evil is a very rare thing in society, and mostly a tool of the elite class. The average American ignores America, tries to conform, and live a nice life within her. And yet, the average American agrees with almost every other American that how we live now is not good, and that something needs to change. By propagandizing and co-opting the language of ideologies, the system is able to remove their teeth, describe a policy where people aren't allowed to starve to death by their country, and most sane people will agree it's good. Bring up the word socialism, and now 60% of the country hates that idea, purely because of the word. Describe knowing what the American system does to opposition and minorities, and how brutal it is when no one is watching, and people will often describe in hushed tones what happened to someone who knows someone they know. Say you're woke, and you become the butt of a joke. By making Americans argue over words instead of concepts, the elite have removed the collective ability to argue politics in any way that doesn't boil down to watching sports. Paired with a rising anti-intellectualism sentiment and constant defunding of education, and the problem becomes teaching people the concept of looking past words and into ideas themselves. An unfortunate number of people can't do this, and it's what's preventing America from ever changing. Leftists argue amongst themselves about words eternally. The anarcho-communists become the sworn enemies of the socialists. The communists and the Democrats think each other to be idiots. The far right call each other and everyone else names, and the center claims both sides are just what the problem is, and that doing nothing is the right thing. To regain control over our own narrative, then, anyone who is an activist needs to cast aside their labels. It truly does not matter. The world we live in is so built to continue to perpetuate itself that we are centuries into a system best described as cancerous. For the world to change, we need to change ourselves in the world. It does not matter who you are. Truly, it does not. A communist and a moderate can agree that the future needs to be a better place. This is what matters. Not words, not imaginary what-ifs, not anything but the fact that we agree. If everyone cast aside the long-term consequences of their ideals and focused on the present, we can all present a unified front against fascism. Fascism relies on the cowards being cowards, and the brave being too separated to do anything. Fascists and establishment Democrats in office, for the most part, both are only ever going to perpetrate the system that allows fascism to rise, and it will rise again. We, the people, are the only ones who have the power to stop this. The activist class, the ones described in this essay, and likely the ones watching this essay still, are small. We are the weakest class within the American system. Most people who are actual activists are driven by a sense of justice and care for the world, and we need to make other people care about the world. The way we do this is not hard or political. It is actually quite simple. Spend time with the people you love, and meet the people who know the people you love. Individualism and introversion are destroying community. The far right and the Nazis all have communities. They are there for each other in good times and hard. It is a sign of our failure that somehow the right wing is the one that has the stronger community. Discard the notion that you don't owe anyone anything. We owe each other everything. Friendship should include labor, because you should help your friends and they should help you. I would go as far as to say that you should go as far as you can for even acquaintances. We cannot understand the value of the world living outside of it. We cannot begin to understand the scope of loss and everything fascism will take from us through a phone. Humans are social creatures, and that need for social connection can change everything. People are not going to remember what praxis is or deep Marxist lore when they're dying. They're going to remember who helped them when times were rough and who was with them when times were good. Appealing to the vague notion of righteousness is not going to be effective. People do not go to church because the pastors appealed to righteousness. They go to church because it gives them a community, and the ideology is served on the side. We must steal this strategy. Why won't someone just do it? I answer this question with why won't you just engage with the world around you? Help someone move, host a board game night, volunteer at a soup kitchen. For God's sake, do anything that isn't doom scroll on Instagram or Reddit. Stop approaching the world through the jaded lens of politics, and instead approach the world as a human being with strengths, flaws, and a lot to learn. Have an open hand, a ready shoulder, and a listening ear. The Nazis might be a lost cause. I don't know. But they're not all of us. They are a vocal and annoying minority. We can meet anyone who doesn't wish to harm us where they are. We can meet most people where they are. Building and engaging in community will make people stand up for everyone in that community. This means driving someone to the airport. This means listening to someone who has had a bad day. This means helping someone if you can, even if you don't like them. This means being as decent and kind of a person as you can be to anyone you can be, even if you don't like them. We cannot hide from the world in books and words and screens. We have to meet the world and make it remember our faces, our hearts, and who we were. It is a responsibility of anyone strong enough to bear this world to make it as bearable for everyone else in the world with them. It is a responsibility of the weak to become as strong as they can to make it easier for those who can't become strong. It is every single human being's obligation to contribute to the world and at least try to make it better. This is how we make the future a better place. Not by excluding anyone, not by pushing for the superior ideal. We make it a better place by taking the hand of anyone who will take our hand in facing the future and all of its uncertainty together. No one needs to just do it. We need to come together to show the Nazis that they are weak, spineless cowards. We need to embrace differences in every way, including ideology. We need to accept the burden of community, including labor, education, companionship, and decency. Fascism relies on hate, on fear. Hatred and fear are not natural parts of the human condition. It is because they are so unnatural that fascism will always fail. It breaks, it cracks, and it leaks. It is so scared of the world around it that it must try and burn it, break it, and mold it into something that only perpetrates fear and hate. Fascism is not inherently human. To defeat it, we must be human. We have to be human first. We cannot fight without a heart behind us, and we cannot progress without the will to fight. It is a responsibility of us all to be human, to have a heart, and to fight. And fighting is almost never done with fists. Most often, fighting is enduring. Fighting is showing up, even when you're tired or angry. Fighting is believing with every step and every breath that you will make the world a better place through gritted teeth and clenched fists. Fighting is patience and grace offered to people not doing as well as you. Fighting is being a better person than those that would break you or anyone you love down, because love, kindness, and decency are natural. They are the human condition. Society would not exist without love, kindness, and decency, and it will not survive without them. We must hold the torch passed to us all by the people before us who believed that the world would be a better place. We must make the flame that torch carries burn brighter. We must someday pass that torch on to someone else who will continue the work. In our lifetimes, it is extremely unlikely that we will see utopia, or heaven, or even as much justice as we would like. But if we come together now, our children and grandchildren, anyone who comes after us, might. The wrongs will never be undone, no. But the potential to do right in the future is limitless if we let it be.